The 2000s were a nostalgic blip many would consider a time. Flip phones, those weird robot dogs, whatever the this style was, and fedoras. Things you'd never get away with bringing outside your home without having your life reevaluated.
Fedora twins!
But when it came to video game trends in the new millennium, one stuck out among the rest, and it was all thanks to one of the most iconic action franchises of all time. The rampage and brutality surrounding the Ghost of Sparta was one that resonated with millions across the world, and naturally, with the even more massive success of the sequel, many were foaming at the mouth to get in on the God of War frenzy. God of War but Catholic, God of War but sexy, God of War but hairy and sexy, God of War but you have the high ground, and sexy. The dawn of the PS3 and 360 was really when God of War clones hit their stride, and while you've probably heard of the ones I just mentioned, there were plenty that flew under the radar, some for good reasons.
Perhaps you would serve a woman then.
Service her, aye, and gladly.
But if you love medieval times, which I mean, how could you not? I'm a part of the Queen's royalty every Friday night. Then you might like Knight's Contract, a unique twist on the God of War hack-and-slash formula set in Middle Ages Germany. You take on the role of Heinrich, an immortal executioner bound by blood to one of the many witches he's slain, Gretchen, who uses her witchcraft to give Heinrich an extra leg up. The game's weird, it's oddly endearing, and most definitely flawed, so strap in, because I'm your guiding wink, and I'm here to take you on a journey through everlasting youth, death, and scientific witchery as we explore the crazy mess of Knight's Contract. When you talk about Knight's Contract's biggest issues, all of them, strangely enough, can be traced back to one game in particular, Clash of the Titans, a movie tie-in game for the film of the same name. You see, the company that made Knight's Contract and Clash of the Titans, Game Republic, entered into an exclusive publishing deal with Brash Entertainment to basically have a free reign of funds for a pretty extensive amount of projects the team began stockpiling. One of those projects that Brash pushed for in particular was Clash. It was a $10 million investment that was going so smoothly that Brash signed Game Republic up for another tie-in game, 301, which would have followed, you guessed it, Real Man 300. Game Republic was owned by Yoshiki Akamoto, the man who had a heavy hand in the creation of games like Resident Evil, Street Fighter II, and Final Fight. I reached out to Akamoto at his new company to try to talk more about Knight's Contract, but I was kindly declined due to Akamoto having little involvement in the title. However, I was told that this work was created during a period when Mr. Akamoto's company was not in a good financial condition. Since then, he has been out of contact with the development team for a long time, and he himself was only minimally involved in the production, so there is a limit to what he can meaningfully discuss. To make a long story short, Brash ended up collapsing due to not having the funding it anticipated. But because of Brash closing, that meant finding a new publisher for Clash so far into production would be tricky. Namco Bandai eventually took the project on and hoped to sell at least 700,000 copies when the game released in 2010. Unfortunately though, Clash only managed to scrounge up 250,000. After a flop that massive and seeing small success with its overseas studios, Namco Bandai decided it was time to crack down more on the production process, which would include anything bearing the Game Republic name. The company would go on to make 2 more games, Majin and the Forbidden Kingdom and Dragon Ball Kai Ultimate Butoden, before throwing a Hail Mary out with Knight's Contract in 2011, hoping the new IP would spark a revenue-flowing franchise, in the hopes of recouping the losses from Clash of the Titans. But like Game Republic's other attempts at fresh IPs, Knight's Contract would fade into obscurity, failing on both the commercial and critical level, considered by many as unfinished. Shortly after Knight's Contract was released, Game Republic would shut down permanently. It's a story that honestly could kind of warrant a video all on its own, but while I definitely would consider Knight's Contract unfinished, I do think there's a certain charm to it that really keeps you moving forward. A charm that primarily comes from the game's most bizarre aspect. Our hero's tales begin in Germany. Not quite. I guess that's a little closer. Ah, perfect. we're shown a flashback of 6 women being publicly executed by Heinrich. They're forest witches, put to death after trying to save the townsfolk from an ailment named the Black Death, unknowingly created by the mad alchemist, Dr. Faust.
At the arrival of the Black Death, these women emerged from their forest and devoted themselves to aiding the people, treating their afflicted, assisting women in labor, and ousting rats and evil spirits.
We see a witch called Gretchen forced to the ground, which leads to her getting her head lopped off, but not before permanently cursing Heinrich with immortality, having to forever live with what he did. Credit where credit's due though, Game Republic really cared about attention to detail, because what I thought was a goofy ass costume was actually a time period accurate one for an executioner. Fast forward 100 years and we see a stitched together Heinrich show up at the now blighted town from the flashback. He's interrupted by this goober named Minukelsis.
Minukelsis is the name, and alchemy is my game.
A wizard's apprentice that's also looking for a way to make it through the treacherous town still plagued by the Black Death, but not before seeing our hero get fisted and flex his immortal muscles. The pair make their way past dozens of bizarre creatures and put themselves in the middle of a conflict between a mysterious blonde witch and Stragel, the Witch of Bones. I think Stragel's aesthetic really shows the game's grossly unique character designs, especially with the witches. The way her insides are like visible and how her bones are flayed out like butterfly wings, my god, it's gnarly, but it's interesting. It's a big reason I always felt so drawn to Game Republic's games like Folklore and Majin the Forbidden Kingdom. The dev team really came up with some unique ideas and aesthetic choices, not just for Knight's Contract, but all their games. But it's the gothic horror influences here that I think will keep a lot of people playing and invested. And that's not even taking into consideration the absolute stacked cast this game had. Like, I don't know what it was about the 2000s to the 2010s, but the 7th generation of gaming was eating good when it came to strong performances.
Humans always look for a reason for their misfortunes.
The sword won't help get us out of this. Please, go now, both of you!
But how cruel to give immortality to a man whose destiny was just to live out his life and die peacefully.
So Stragel somehow flies away on nothing but bones in a dream, as the cryptic witch from earlier reveals herself as Gretchen from the beginning flashback. After she died by Heinrich's blade, she was reborn and transitioned her soul into the body of a homunculus through witchcraft and with the help from Minkelsis. A rare example of homunculus necromancy working, unlike many of the other monstrosities we see throughout the game.
Wait.
Hello, Daddy.
Don't
hello,
you see?
Daddy, hello.
Look what you did.
Now we get to utilize the game's mechanics in full swing with Gretchen's witchcraft on the table. Heinrich may offer your regular run-of-the-mill button mashing, but Gretchen's sorcery is one of the more unique selling points of the game. With Heinrich being unkillable, the health bar solely symbolizes Gretchen's HPs, so it's up to the knight to protect his witch while using her magic to deal massive damage and carry out brutal finishers. Even though Heinrich can't die, he can be incapacitated and ripped to shreds. When that happens, you have to rapidly mash buttons to piece him back together before Gretchen's killed and it's game over. Similarly, Gretchen can be slowly healed by leaping to the big brute's Frankenstein arms. It's this fast-paced symbiotic relationship that elevates the game from being just some glorified escort mission. And there's even some secret spells you can find that really make continuous playthroughs worthwhile, like the ability to give Heinrich a fucking minigun. Yeah, you can't make this shit up, but it's a beautiful thing. With Gretchen by your side, you also have the ability to fill your point meter to use one of 2 skills, the Knight's Fury that turns Heinrich into a hulking armor-clad paladin, and the Witch's Embrace, which turns Gretchen into a naked giant that kills every enemy in the room with her assets. And it's that magic that helps put Stragel in a chokehold in a fight above the village rooftops. That is, until she does this.
I shall bind your soul here for all eternity.
Turning into a FromSoft abomination, Stragel chases you throughout the town until you go toe-to-toe with her new monstrous form. It's a cool fight that has Stragel flinging herself across buildings and even doing things like spewing fire. And unfortunately, what should be this big celebration for beating Stragel kind of becomes anything but that, and it's because of what I would argue is the game's most colossal flaw. Oh god, this is hard. Like, look, I really want to love this game, but what the f? I can't express this enough, but f these QTEs. F them where the sun don't shine, f them where the sun always shines. I mean, hell, I'll even go so far as to say f them where the sun kinda shines. Look, the argument for QTEs in general aside, they're by far the worst aspect of the game, and outside of the really cool cutscenes attached to them, there is not a single redeeming thing about them. Why is that, you may ask? Well, you see, when I first played the game years ago, I played on hard. Little did I know, each increased difficulty gives you less and less reaction time. Luckily, they're predetermined QTEs, so the buttons you need to press stay the same no matter how many times you fail, but there's just no excuse. I recorded gameplay for this like a few weeks ago on normal, and even then, I was so done with messing up, I just started writing the button presses down so I could just breeze right through them. If they were anywhere else in the game, I'd maybe not be so hard on them, but the fact that they only show up for boss encounters, I just really wish they weren't included at all. The bosses are some of the most fun to be had with this game, so it's a shame that the worst mechanic in it is also attached to them. Not to mention that every time you fail a QTE, the boss gains back a few health bars, and you have to fight them all over again, which, how does that make sense? Whew. Finally excited that I get to watch this. It's been such a long day. I don't have a controller on me, so I don't really understand how I'm supposed to do that, so... Oh, okay. I guess that doesn't matter. Guess it wasn't fast enough for that. Alright, I don't know if... Alright, this is just getting ridiculous. All in all, it's only a small part of the game, but it really does bog down what I think are the game's most standout moments. Gretchen reveals Faust had falsely blamed her and her sisters for the Black Death, in order to obtain the shards they held that were needed to create the Anima del Monde, a crystal that would grant Faust everlasting youth. The story of Knight's contract, as well as the character of Faust and some of the locations, are actually based on an old German story of the same name. In the story, the alchemist Faust makes a deal with the devil in order to find the secret to fortune and love. It's a tale that's been retold through plenty of different mediums like operas and plays, but whereas Faust has somewhat of a redemption arc in the OG story, the Faust and Knight's contract is smarmy and far past irredeemable by the start of the game.
Sacrifice is a part of life.
Heinrich explains he's traveled the earth for decades, trying to find another witch to break the curse Gretchen cast on him. So the pair make a pact that if Heinrich helps her defeat her resurrected sisters and gets the shards of the Anima del Monde before Faust does, she can make him mortal again.
I designate this man as my companion, as the knight to whom I entrust myself. Bind his soul to mine, until death separates us.
We're then taken to Faust's chambers, where we're introduced to the mighty voluptuous Verdurende. I mean, come on, they basically gave her the Miss Bellum treatment, because what the hell is this? Verdurende is one of the 6 witches executed with Gretchen, who is working hand in hand with Faust to lead her vengeful sisters into the damnation of humanity. We get a few more up-close shots of her before we're taken back to Gretchen and Heinrich, who are now climbing the snowy mountain ruled by Trude, the Witch of Ice. And as our duo explore the mountain, the first fleshed out level of the game, I guess now is as good of a time as any to talk about the aspect of the game that kinda has me the most divided. Alright, so the level design. Honestly pretty solid in some areas, but incredibly bland in others. A real standout, which we'll get into later, is when you get to the castle of Rapunzel, the Witch of Hair. It easily stands out as the most unique and well-made level in the whole game, and has this really cool gothic architecture mixed with the fairy tale whimsy of Rapunzel with all the hair strewn about the place. It definitely oozes character and charm, unlike other levels like Trude's Snow Mountain, which is kind of generic in comparison. But I will say, for the most part, even when some levels seem basic from an artistic standpoint, I do think most of them are mapped out in a unique enough way that keeps most of them from getting stale. There are exceptions though, like Trude's Snow Mountain, that are kind of confusing to navigate and could have been designed a little bit better. There are other, unfortunately worse offenders though, like Verdurende's Illusion later in the game, that do feel somewhat lazy since they're just really rehashed stages from other levels. So once the Witch and the Knight battle their way through Trude's icy tundra, they're then hit with ice snakes. After a short boss fight with them, we get to see the mastermind controlling them.
Trude, what you're doing is wrong.
I'm just doing what the humans expect. The humans had us executed, forgetting how devoted we were to them. I swore I would have revenge, even if I had to sell my soul to the devil.
And I cannot stress this enough. The design of all the witches need to really be celebrated here. They're all either distinctively gross or visually interesting at the very least, and Trude's no exception. The idea of making her an icy Medusa is pretty innovative and makes for an awesome and hectic boss fight, which, speaking of, fuck it, let's talk about him. They're pretty good. No, but seriously, I meant what I said earlier about the bosses being the best part of the game. They definitely make you strategize more than any regular enemy does. I haven't talked about it much, but the spells you get access to through Gretchen are really versatile and offer a unique synergy between her and Heinrich that's especially shown through these witch fights. You see, each spell can debilitate enemies in different ways, like snaring them, piercing them, or literally punching them into the ground. But each boss is different, and some spells are more effective than others. Take Trude, for example. She moves around all over the place and hovers above the area, so naturally, my first instinct was to use the bear trap spell to hold her in place. Once you have a spell that matches up with that witch, like I did with Trude or any other enemy, you'll get a button prompt to deal even more damage and extend your combo meter and grade. It encourages experimenting and lining up spells together to deal as much damage as possible. I mean, just take a look at the power you have when you're playing well. After Trude gets her snake tail handed to her, it's on to the next HBIC, Holda, the Witch of Flames.
There she is.
Run! Run! Get out!
I'll skip ahead some here because plot-wise, nothing eventful really happens until the fight with Holda, and it's probably one of the most annoying in the game, but kudos once again to the design team because I am a sucker for a kick-ass chariot.
Swing sweet chariot.
Two witches, now back in the ground where they belong, Heinrich and Gretchen set off to find the next sister, but are interrupted by Faust, who gives a lengthy villain monologue. But Heinrich's not interested in that bullshit.
I don't have time for this cryptic speech.
So it quickly goes from a battle of wits to a duel between sword and scythe. Honestly, this is easily my favorite boss in the whole game, and it only felt right that we talk about it more than some of the other fights. I feel like it tests your skills with both the witch and the executioner in the way the devs intended. Unlike every other boss, Faust is your size, and in turn is able to move more quickly. This makes nailing him with spells especially tricky, but when you line it up just right, the dopamine is unmatched. It very much feels like a fight among equals, and is one of those fights you kind of keep losing on purpose just so you can keep fighting. Him being the alchemist he is, Faust also summons copies of himself to aid him in battle, which makes the fight even more hectic. But despite the thrashing you might give Faust, he's able to keep Heinrich at bay with all of the shards of the Anima del Monde he's gathered.
Well, I'm done. Just seeing your face after so long was enough for today.
Continuing on to Rapunzel's castle, we get a bit more insight into the power of Gretchen's piece of the famed crystal.
It's the power of this shard that allows me to use witchcraft. It's also what keeps my soul anchored in this body. It is the root of all magic. A crystal which gives whoever obtains it power beyond human understanding. That is the Anima del Monde.
It's for some reason at this point too that Gretchen just now mentions that we have to stop Faust before a ritual at the top of the mountain called Walpurgis Night, which does kind of confuse me because if Faust needs all of these pieces to align during Walpurgis Night, then why would Gretchen race to feed it to him on a silver platter? Why not just wait him out? But whatever. What do I know? Obviously, I'm not a witch. Walpurgis Night is also rooted in German literature and is a pagan festival meant to ward off evil spirits and usher in the season of spring. As our duo finds themselves at Rapunzel's tower, Gretchen gives some more background into her youngest sister.
Rapunzel can tell the future with her hair. 100 years ago, One of her premonitions told us that humans would execute us witches.
I love lore like this that's just randomly added by the devs. Given I'm not familiar with the actual Rapunzel story, but it's definitely the first time I've heard that she could do something like that. At the castle, we're introduced to another witch, one you definitely can't miss.
She's gained some weight since I last saw her.
This is Trendela, the Witch of Thunder, and she's the only thing that stands between us and Rapunzel. But when it comes to Heinrich's blade, it don't discriminate. Big or small, the witches all fall. The fight with Trendela actually spans a few different parts of the level. Think kind of along the same lines of the Hydra fight from God of War. When you finally get into the real fight with her, well, that's when gets real.
Heinrich!
Okay, yes, the top of the castle is a great set piece for the fight, but why the hell did the devs make it so Trendela can just knock you out of bounds? Because of her size.
She's gained some weight.
She's got the power to throw you off any bridge, so you've got to be really careful to not get Heinrich incapacitated or else Gretchen's getting launched. Overall, not the hardest thing in the world, but definitely still annoying. After we do our thing, it's on to Rapunzel, who looks relatively normal in comparison.
Take back your future, Gretchen.
I mean, I don't even know why I'm surprised. I'm usually biased because I personally hate spider bosses in video games, since to me, they're just an easy enemy type to go for, and they're just kind of lazy. But with that being said, I will give this a little bit of a pass because I do think this design is a small step up above others. Having Rapunzel's face replace the spider's abdomen is a really creative choice, and again, just shows the team's commitment to creating a visually fascinating but equally horrific style. After she's beaten, Rapunzel confesses that she took her own life after escaping Faust's execution 100 years ago, because she had a premonition that 6 witches would be resurrected to wreak havoc on humanity. Knowing that Gretchen was on the chopping block, Rapunzel died in a last-ditch effort to become the 6th witch before Gretchen, so that Gretchen could escape the prophecy.
Please, forgive me, Gretchen. Farewell.
It's a touching scene that then fades to black as we now make our way up the mountain where Walpurgis Night is set to take place. But it's here that Verdurende decides to throw a wrench in our hero's plans. She throws Gretchen and Heinrich into a fabricated reality where the pair are forced to split up to escape her illusion. It's a cool sequence that, in my eyes, kind of overstays its welcome. It goes from a great concept, separating the two major mechanics you've relied on so much throughout the game, and turns it into padding. What makes Knight's Contract unique as a hack and slash is that it's not the hack and slashing that's the star of the show. Instead, it's how you use your witchcraft. So obviously, when you put those mechanics in a vacuum, like in these levels, the cracks really show. Despite his brutish size, Heinrich's strain of attacks are pretty weak, all things considered. So for his individual level, the devs still gave him a companion in the form of Minukelsis. It's a cool enough change, with the health bar now representing Minukelsis instead of Gretchen. But he only has 4 abilities, as opposed to all the different ones you can swap out with as Gretchen. There's only 2 that are useful, the bomb that can freeze enemies, and the stab that can one-shot them. Even though I found Heinrich's level a lot easier than Gretchen's, it was a lot less creative. It was basically just business as usual, just with more limitations. It didn't help that like 75% of both levels were just reskins of the Hold the Fire village. Now when it comes to Gretchen going stag, things get a lot more interesting. With no companion at all, the devs had to build in some of her own combos without Heinrich by her side. And surprisingly, she is infuriatingly slow. Honestly, I found myself using her chains to knock people out of bounds more than actually dealing damage. But you do have the big benefit of being able to use witchcraft again. Now where things get really frustrating is with Gretchen's health. Since she's flying solo, she doesn't have her boy's big burly arms to heal her, which means the only way to get health back is to draw energy from the witch point bar, which is limited, which obviously means that it's a lot easier to die. A lot easier. But because of you now having to be a lot more careful, there are some cool situations the devs still throw you into. Like an encounter with a Golden Knight, one of the hardest foes in the game. With Heinrich, fighting a Golden Knight was hard enough, but with just Gretchen, well, it's exhausting. You've got to run away and bob and weave through tight sewer corridors to get away rather than a straight up fight. But then you're thrown into a situation where you have no choice but to fight one, and it's scenarios like this that make these levels a bit more worthwhile. But with how slow and brittle Gretchen is, fights can still be downright unfair with the amount of enemies you're forced to tussle with. Both Heinrich and Gretchen's solo stages end in brawls against imitations of the other, and while Gretchen's fight was uneventful to say the least, the fake Heinrich clash was pretty fun. It's cool in the same way I love the Faust battle, where he doesn't let you just wail on him too much, so you've got to really make your shots count. After the copycats fall, so does Veterende's illusion, finally throwing us into a boss fight with her.
All I desire is revenge on humanity. For all of our sakes, I considered you my daughters, and I'll never forgive them for killing you. It's far too late to reverse what has already been set in motion. Though I suppose you have no intention of giving up your futile quest.
She's probably my second favorite outside of Faust, since the way she moves and flies around the stage makes for a fun way to use your powers, punching her down from the sky to bear trap her. It's easy, but once the fight's over and you stuff her into a coffin, geez, these death scenes are Green Lantern levels of spectacle. It's time for the final showdown with Faust. The final few levels leading up to him, I won't even really gloss over because they're just kind of boring, and again, I feel like they're just there to kind of pad out the game's length. From a level design perspective, the game really did peak at Rapunzel's castle and just kind of slowly went downhill from there. Once the duo get to Faust, you're locked into another brawl with him, similar to the one at the bridge before he turns into...
Is this what you mean?
At this stage, we should just expect everybody that looks good to just look like a horse's ass at some point. If there's any consolation, the Dragon Quest fan of me right now is going crazy. The fight is one part neat, but also another part tedious. You've got to bring down his legs and then walk up to the core where Faust rests inside the beast. That's where you can really go to town. The moves are easy enough to dodge, but like I said, bringing down the legs can be a tedious job, so this is another great example of why those QTEs can be a massive pain in the ass. But right before we go to put our scythe through Faust, a twist appears.
It's over, Faust. Give up.
Veterende tells Gretchen she was actually using Faust the whole time, but had to play along since he had the shards of the Anima del Monde from the resurrected witches, including herself. Offered the chance to dominate humankind, Gretchen turns down her proposal, which sparks rage from a newly powered up Veterende. Yeah, but, you know, somewhere out there, I firmly believe there's someone that still would. But it's not Heinrich, who, fighting the stereotype that men only want one thing, does what he was born to do. The final battle, from a spectacle standpoint, is pretty epic, all things considered, and is a good evaluation to show how far you've come. She flies around the arena like she did before, but this time, she's got attacks that f with the camera, so that's always fun. She can also zip through you faster than you have the chance to move sometimes, which, you know, epic. No, but in all seriousness, I think if the camera was a little bit less wonky, this would be a great fight, but as it stands now, it's just kind of an okay conclusion. Our pair send Veterende packing with a well-placed lance through a f***ing meteor, blowing her up just well enough to still give a final heartfelt warning to her one sister-in-arms.
Those humans you just saved will one day destroy themselves and this world.
No matter what you say, I believe in humanity's potential and in their future.
With the shards recovered and the knight's contract now lifted, the game finally comes to an end. Well, end is a little bit not true. Now flung into what I could only assume is a modern day New York, yes, modern day, we're shown Gretchen in her Kardashian era, before then getting an eyeful of Heinrich, and my god, the man cleans up good. In the distance, the millennia-old witch and her knight see a problem they're both eager to solve.
Darkness is ever present.
Indeed. Let's return it to where it belongs.
So this was actually supposed to lead into a sequel that Game Republic was hoping for, but obviously with the company shutting down since the game's release, this would just stay as a cliffhanger. And you know, it sucks because despite all of its flaws, I think there was still so much good here, and if Game Public was given another shot, I think a modern day Knight's Contract would hit so much harder. I mean, we've seen how creative this team can be, and I don't just mean with Knight's Contract. I mean, I've played Majin in the Forbidden Kingdom, I've played Folklore, I've played Genji. I think if you were to throw our protagonists into city landscapes, it could make for a pretty worthwhile game. I mean, hell, look at how well fantasy and modern day have mixed well, I liked it. Overall, the story of Knight's Contract leaves a lot to be desired, but the world and lore on their own gives a lot of room for growth and expansion. I would have loved a lot more impactful moments just between Heinrich and Gretchen to really sell that bond they share so that their contractual relationship expanded into one of compassion and understanding. And I think a sequel could have really helped strengthen that. Sure, it's not perfect, but a sequel could have been exactly what was needed to really build on and fine-tune the more interesting concepts that the game presented. It'd only be a year after Game Republic's fall and Knight's Contract's release that Akamoto would announce his retirement from developing console games altogether. Most of the company's staff were hired by Tango Gameworks, who years later would release The Evil Within, one of the most visually unique horror games ever made, which makes sense considering the monstrosities of Knight's Contract. Obviously, a few more years of breakthroughs and advancements in game development made The Evil Within a technical marvel, and it really is a shame we'll never see a Knight's Contract game of that same caliber. Especially since its performance about a third of the time was really bad when there was too many enemies on screen. Like, for an action game like this, that's just something you can't ignore, when it's so bad at times that I can't even tell what the f is going on. But as the saying goes, if you love something, set it free. Well, luckily, I didn't love Knight's Contract, so maybe it can be brought back for all the good that it does have to offer, because I do really think a lot of people will still thoroughly enjoy it for what it is. So what do you think of the game if you played it? And if you didn't, tell me your favorite type of medieval cheese in the comments. And most importantly, don't forget to comment some other games and topics you want me to talk about and check out, and leave a like and subscribe if you think I'm a warlock that deserves to be spared. Take care.